I'd like to make a special welcome to John Booth and Michael Hewison, the co-opted members of the committee. I'm sure their input going forward will be significant. I'd also like to acknowledge the presence of Mayor Ron Mark at the meeting. So in a couple of changes, Parakia, my Maori pronunciation is not good. I was brought up in the generation, with a lot of you. At school, we learned a lot about Maori history. We learned a lot about Maori, the Maori way of life, but we didn't learn Te Reo. That's been for subsequent generations. But I have a deep respect for Maori culture and Maoridom generally. And to that end, I would say to you, Haere mai, tēnā koutou katoa, which means welcome and welcome to everyone. The other change in the agenda, which I think should be an all the time, but anyway, it is this time, is I've put, you can add general business at the bottom of the agenda. So what
can't. No. Here, under our standing orders, we're unable to have general business.
Don't do it. Can't do it.
Public needs to know what's going to be discussed.
So you can signal that in future, you would be wanting general be on the agenda.
On an agenda item.
And as an agenda item.
So general business could be brought in.
Yes.
I mean,
No, we not as a general.
no, I mean, an item needs to be named what it is.
All right.
So if you've got an item that you'd like to discuss, it's
Yeah, okay.
got to be
Yeah.
added to the agenda so the public are informed before our meeting agenda is published. So if the public wish to talk to that item, they can.
We had
Right.
Yeah, we had this discussion some time ago, but in meetings, when we meet once every 3 months, then general business was always quite good. And the fact that sometimes things came up from time to time that could be discussed there with the relevant staff members.
The way to do it would be to email Robin Blue, the Democratic Services, before the agenda is published on the Friday.
Yeah.
And then we can add them into the agenda.
Add items.
Add items into the agenda. Yep. So my suggestion to any of the committee members, if you do have items you wish to add to the agenda, be specific and email them through to Robin Blue on before the Friday of the water race meeting, and then that way we'll be able to add them into the agenda.
All right.
So if we have a matter that sort of comes up and we think, well, it might be worthy of discussion, how do we incorporate that into the meeting?
So you be specific with the topic, and then we can add it to the agenda.
But we can't do it.
You can't do it late. If it's not on the agenda, the public don't get the ability to participate in the conversation if they wish to.
So
that's the only
to be discussed the next meeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Sorry.
Are you thinking, Neil, just looking for a way through, are you thinking that if in discussion, an issue, say 6.1 of if in that general discussion of that report, there's a matter that's not actually covered, are you permitted to raise it relating to that? You sure are. Or you should.
Because I have something I just want to discuss. It's not urgent, but I feel it's quite important. Do I just take my chance?
If it's a new topic.
Yeah.
Outside.
So what I think an example of what I noticed, particularly at the last meeting, was, for example, electing co-opted members. And because it wasn't, if it had been general business, it would have come up in general business, or Neil would have up. As it was, it sort of hodgepodge just went into discussion. Because I think what you're probably saying, Neil, is that after you've read this agenda that you received, then you may say, actually, there is something else I wanted to bring up. Is that true?
If it's part of the agenda, then you'll speak to it in that item. If it's a brand new topic, you can't raise it impromptu. It's got to be signalled through the agenda so the general public know what's coming up, so that we're not seen to be making decisions
Excluding the public.
without prior warning
Yeah.
or notice.
So this is published.
Yeah.
And it's that publication of the agenda and that the public will make a decision as to whether or not they want to listen in, as they are now, or not. And if something new pops up, as that what the CEO and the guidance is, that if you can't just throw it on without there being public notification.
So it should really go to the chair.
Yeah.
So in this case,
Right.
and the chair should add it to the agenda. So at future, email Brian if you've got an issue that you want to raise, and Brian will get it added to the agenda.
Okay, all right, we accept that. All right, we'll move on to apologies. The only apology I've got is Phil Easton. Brian? Brian? Oh, Brian.
There's toast.
Yeah, Brian,
Also move, Mr.
Okay,
I'll move to the.
yep, okay, the second up. Yep, Steve, all those in favour, please say aye. Conflicts of interest, declaration, any conflicts of interest? Nothing, public forum?
We have no one in public forum.
Oh, yeah, Sarah, isn't it?
Sarah?
I think we should probably introduce Sarah.
Yeah.
To the group.
Cool.
Sarah, well, do you want, is Sarah in simple terms, like, is Pikey's sidekick? She, Sarah's going. So, it's going, well, if I pay you to do, yeah, you.
Perhaps one of the pieces of feedback that we have received quite often is how do we download what's in Pikey's head in a manner that ensures the water race continues well beyond Pikey's ability to help us maintain it. And so we've been looking at how we manage that, and as part of that, we've figured out an upgrade strategy to which involves Sarah. Sorry, Pikey, I'm being a little bit rude. No, so part of that is tag teaming someone with Pikey as he goes out, because realistically we can't download what he's learned over 40 or 50 years on water race, but what we can do is learn the real pressure points. And so what we've asked Pikey to do, and Sarah has gratefully stood up, is to help transfer the knowledge on the pressure points within the network and how we maintain the water race going through in dry times, and also what we do when there is flood risk and how we manage the network overall. So that's Sarah, who's been part of the team. And I'll be more than happy if Sarah wants to introduce herself and say a few words.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know about a few words, but hi guys, my name's Sarah Hazelby. I was actually born in Carterton, first 20 years of my life, so it's actually a great part to be in. I can't wait to meet you guys all separately. And if there's any questions or anything you want to ask, or just ask away. I'm Pikey's shadow. Yeah,
No, you're not. You're
Yeah.
part of the water race team.
part of the
Yeah.
And I think it's really important that, this is not a manager subservient relationship. This is about somebody who's starting the journey on water race for the whole community. And I'm really grateful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
It's good.
Do you want
Oh,
to
that-
sit at the table?
No, I'll just sit and listen. to this.
Yeah, Abby? Yeah, okay. It's good. How did we get on? I think, Rachel, have we made us as a, had an attempt at sort of getting information from Pikey as to regarding the management of the water races? Have we got stuff written down?
I can also answer that, or Johannes maybe answer that. So these are two-part strategy, and Pikey will correct me when I'm wrong. And part of that is using our asset database, so GIS tools, to log and map the water race and also the assets that are in that water race. And then there was the second part, which is the knowledge of managing those assets. So we've got a two-part strategy. One is the GIS, and that's already underway. The second part strategy is the knowledge transfer for the human. So
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good, because I just think it's most important that we all do. It's most important that we tabulate
document.
and
Yep.
document stuff, that things that Pikey have done,
Mhm.
which only Pikey knows.
Mhm.
cleaning, we've had various discussions. We've changed this cleaning regime at one point, and to great cost to ourselves, because we decided to listen to someone that thought they knew. So we've learned a few lessons, but it's that the intricate running of that system is to get those things jotted down so that, like, Sarah can look at something and say, actually, at that particular point, like he said, that often is a problem, and this is what he collected upstream to fix that problem. And those, like, I'm forever amazed at, even though myself and John Neil, we've lived our life on the waterway system. So us and our fathers before us have had an ongoing liaison with Pikey and his predecessors. And then we go out on a field trip and Pikey shows us something, explains something, how he operates, and I haven't got a clue. It's all new to me. And I think, how much knowledge is there out there that we just, if the Pikey wasn't here tomorrow, we'd be stumbling. So I do think it's great to have Sarah involved and certainly writing things down.
Mr. Chairman, just to give you an idea, is that we have done what we call the Carrington, which we have an SOP, standard operating procedures, which Trish and I did. It took 3 years to do that. And we've got numbers on gateways that relate to the plan. So you look up the plan, you get the owner's name, you look at the number closest to that, it tells you what gate to go through, how to get directly to where the problem might be.
Yep.
Gary Baker and I fine-tuned that so that he could use it on his own without my help. So it does work. It takes a lot of work, a lot of careful planning to do it. That took 3 years, and that covers 40 kilometres. We've got 600 kilometres in Paratai, so it's not going to happen overnight. Done a plan because I've worked the first one out as to how Sarah and I will start that process of documenting every culvert,
Yep.
everywhere and everything. So it's just something that's going to take a lot of time, but we'll do it section by section.
Good work. Good work, Pikey. Oh, we'll move on to a confirmation of the minutes. Having been circulated and read, would someone like to move that these are a true and accurate recording of the last meeting? Neil, is there a seconder? Stephen? Yep, all those in favour? Stephen Gowan? All those in favour, please say aye. Now, are there any matters arising from the minutes? I've got a couple. I see in the minutes, it said that the chairman and deputy chairman were going to be involved in working through questions in a survey to ratepayers.
Yep.
And the public. And hopefully the report, hopefully that we report, the survey would be going out by the 17th of March. But I don't think we've been consulted, I haven't anyway.
No, so we've got a draft. We can probably share. So yeah,
Lawrence, just to, sorry. So, Mr. Chair, this is what we discussed on Friday, the question out.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's actually very basic and just gets the use of the waterways. And Marcus can probably correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't we planning to publish the survey today?
we can publish it as soon as that is.
Yeah. So that's what we've discussed.
Yeah. So, so the other part of I thought we had discussion and the survey was going to go to ratepayers. And I think under the requirements for the consent, it had to go to the public. But I thought we'd agreed at the last meeting that we'd go to waterways ratepayers first.
Yes.
It will go to Waterways ratepayers and it
Yeah.
will be open to the public
Oh, yeah.
to submit, even
Yeah.
if they don't have a
Yeah.
water race in their property.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, that's right.
It is well laid out in terms of like the first question is, do you have a water race? Do you own or have a property with a water race on it? So that'll help us separate out if you've got the ratepayers or compared to the general public if they're commenting on it.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll know.
Well, yeah.
But yeah, that was going to be one of the questions sort of going in is how do you feel is the best way to sort of contact, whether or not we try to email those email addresses or whether we just do a general mail out to everybody on the, who has a water race basically.
Yep.
And pays rates.
All right. So do you want to speak to that later? Or do it now?
Seeing as we're discussing it, may as well do it now.
I'd probably suggest a mail out. And then, you know, people get it.
So the comms plan was to do it online, Marcus, and you can correct me again. So it'll be online and it will be mailed to the water race users. Or, yeah, but it'll be primarily online. Is that correct, Marcus? Yes.
But they'll have options anyway.
Yes, and they can submit it either online or in hard copy, so they don't have to do it online.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Any other matters rising? Everyone happy? Okay, we'll move on to reports. Rachel and Pikey.
I'll hand this over to Lawrence. Lawrence is the author of the report.
Just come to the section. So since we previously met, we have been advancing the water race consent. And I'll let Pikey talk about the actual maintenance in a bit. So I've shared, should have been a link in the email that went out in terms of some of the evidence and that we've sort of been gathering. I discussed it previously in terms of there'll be a water balance slash how much was going, what linkages there were for groundwater. The latest feedback is that we're probably going to have to delay that because we haven't been able to get low flow conditions in the water races this year. So it's probably something that'll have to be pushed out and either further evidence in terms of discussions with Greater Wellington or else a consent condition if we manage to get the consent granted that quickly. We've also had Stantec who have looked at the previous water quality analysis that we've been doing and the overall network. So that's a finalised report, unless anything sort of crops up in discussions with Greater Wellington if we do any more or further sampling. And also we've had an ecologist going catching fish and around the network, and he's got that report in there as well. And then overall there'll be consultant Kristen Foster, who was involved in the previous consent around pulling together the overall arching AE and what particular parts of the legislation we need to comply with. And we've been having various discussions with the iwi group as well. Any questions on the consenting as such?
You said there's a link. Where would I find that?
That should have been emailed through the previous one.
So it would be attached to the document, so it's at.
Was it
No,
attached to the,
no, it was in the email.
it was in the email.
Okay, I'll find it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Lawrence, I just wonder if you could give the committee a view on delay in having low flow
Yes.
this year, what that may or may not mean for the consent timeline.
In terms of timeline, we'll have it in. It just means that in terms of that request for information, we'll just have to, it'll be, as I said, a consent condition or something in within 2 years, we'll have to have gone along, collected a sample and then provide a report trying to assess how much is lost to groundwater, how much flows out the end and how much the usage is. So that
Might affect the submission consent.
no, it's just, I was hoping to have all the evidence there, so we didn't have to have another report that we have to gather in the future. Yeah. So yeah, I don't see it affecting it as all. It's just additional work.
It's very difficult to get accurate measurements on that stuff.
Yes. And if you actually read the draft report, you'll see that there's a large variation from about 22% to 70% loss to groundwater. Yeah.
Yep.
Which I'm not sure, it'll be interesting to see how the regional council view that. Because there's one thing in the PNRP around the efficiency of your use of the water. But without that assessment on how much is being lost to groundwater and how much, I don't know, the portion of the groundwater is being provided by the water race because it's consistently there. You're sort of missing that part without. So I think, yeah, it's probably in our favour.
Yeah. There's a lot of gut feeling involved there.
Yeah.
Mike, have you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a hell of a tricky one because you've got the usage of water to the ground, you've got the evaporation, you've got how much the trees drink and all of that to account with. But just the underground is being lowered by, I guess, the use or the climate change or whatever. Where our problem lies, I see it, is in the natural streams. Because, and what they call them nowadays is modified streams, but, and I've harped on for years, as you well know. As far as I'm concerned, the stream that goes dry is the ephemeral stream. So the likes of Wainawa Stream, Booze Creek and Parkvale Stream, we supply the water in low flows. So they say that we can't count that water. Well, if it doesn't come from us, if we cut it off, then those streams go dry. So there has to be a huge recognition for that water that we put into those three streams within the boundaries of the water race. And that's not being taken into account at the moment, as far as I'm aware. Is it, Lawrence, you think?
I don't know, you're coming against a group that are saying, well, that's the natural environment. And
I think
so that's what you're fighting at, retaining it in the actual main river compared to supplementing those smaller streams, which would naturally go dry.
That's the three attachment reports there that are being talked about. So I have printed them. The only one that I haven't read is that one, but I've read that one and that one. And I guess for that efficiency, they used two calculation methods. One, they did a water balance, so they just tried to add up what goes in and what goes out. But yeah, what's going out the tail end was a problem. So they picked a thread of the water race network and then they used Reynolds Ware to help identify what was happening at the bottom end. And they got an answer, which was a large range. And then they went to a more theoretical method where they modelled the shape of the channels and assumed a water depth in it of 0.5 metre. Now, I took that they were saying, well, there's quite a bit of weed and stuff, so it elevated the water level. But that gave a driving head, which could then push the water out through the sides of the channel where the water table was lower than the channel, because there is also some work in there on where the water table might be higher than the channel, which is pushing water in, versus where the water table's lower. And so there is then a mathematical curve in there that represents or models the decay of the level of the water as it's high here in the waterways and it falls over here to the underground water table. So those two methods both gave a big range, but you could pick a number sort of in the middle of, I don't know, 40 to 60% might be the loss to the groundwater, which my reading, I read them all once. It was, this is looking not too bad because I know GW have banged on about this for a long, long time. So there was at least some attempt, and not one, but two different methodologies of trying to put their finger on some idea of what the range might be. And they were both indicating that there was probably a net positive drop into the water table. So it's sort of the efficiency then that helps that calculation because it means that the little bit that you're drawing out, you're having to put a lot in to get that. Well, you're putting a lot in to get that little, but there's a lot disappearing and helping the environment as well.
Yeah, but that analysis and those sort of arguments, what Pikey's saying was us, we're directly feeding Parkvale and Wainoa streams, but that stuff's got to be tabulated properly. So that goes in to our resource consent when we ask for more water.
Yeah, there is some comment about that in here, but not a lot. So it probably needs to be fleshed out.
I think the failure on this stuff is when you get all this mumbo jumbo and you get people in regional council coming down and saying, well, no, that stream, that, like Lawrence just said, supplying water for Parkvale and Wainoa, it doesn't count. It counts, all right. When we're on low flows and we're trying to keep fish alive in our streams, it counts big time. And I think that's where we've really got to, those issues are the ones that are really got to be sorted out in this resource consent process. And I don't believe we've done it properly before.
Mr. Chairman, when the catchment days, all the meetings that I went to do with the renewal of our water right, the catchment board clearly stated that there was a 33% loss to the underground.
Right.
And that's when they had their classification officers actually worked in the field. They don't actually sit in an office in Wellington. So they actually are capable of doing gaugings and sightings and all sorts of stuff to get that information.
Yep. Okay. Any more questions on the or comments on the water race report, or have you got or questions to Lawrence, or have you and Rachel got anything to add?
Just the only
comment on what's written in here.
The only thing I've highlighted in here as well is the stock exclusion and vegetation clearance, and there's quite a bit of stuff about that, and that's yeah. So the water races would normally be classed as a class 2 water body, I think, but the regional councils actually dragged them through the PNRP, so that overrides that, and pretty much they all get caught, whereas most of them are probably narrower than a metre and might drop outside of it. So I see that there is an issue there with respect to the cleaning regime and the fencing regime.
And the definitions.
Yeah.
The only, Mikey, do you want to comment on or Rachel? Do you want to comment on what? Yeah, are you happy?
Yeah.
Yeah, the only question I'll have for you, Pikey, I noticed that you've talked in here, you've talked about trees blocking, streams obviously, which you've gone over before, and culverts, and who's going to be responsible for clearing them? Is it a ratepayer is it a water race cost, or the individual ratepayer who's responsible for the trees on his property?
Well, I mean, the problem is this year's a 1 in 100 or 1 in 200 or whatever. So we've been going forward for years, planting, because that's the nice way to go. But these trees now are 30 or 40 years old, quite big. You get the rainfall that we've had since October, and then you get 1 or 2 days of wind, then they all fall over. We have to cut them off and push the stumps back. In the cases, take the stumps out and then pack the bank with clay or sandbags, leakage out into the adjacent land. Well, we just drag them away from the race to allow us to carry on our operation and leave the landowner to clean it up as time goes on. But with the new fencing program, the tree planting has quadrupled. So going forward, not in my time, but in 20, 30 years' time, you're going to be huge problems. But not only is it an obstruction to the water race, because the first thing that happens when the tree falls in, the branches lay in the water, create a dam, the water overflows, runs out. So you've got 20 or 30 trees down in just one weekend. You can end up with 20 or 30 leaks straight away. The other thing is that some of the trees can pollute the water depending upon what type of tree they are, what comes out of their leaves or their bark. So you've got that to contend with. The other thing is that it holds up the maintenance program. So we've gone bigger buckets and faster cleaning to keep the cost down. Well, when you've got to stop, unfortunately, because the way we design the weed buckets, we design them for lightweight so we can get more length. And there's less steel in them because we have all the bars out of the back to allow the fish to be sucked out. They're not suitable for removing trees. So the operator has to stop, take his bucket off, put a bucket on with teeth to get the tree out of the way. So all that may only take a few minutes. But when I used to drive myself, I used to be able to clean the chain in 7 minutes. So, if you've got a 2 metre bucket and you're on tracks and you're beside the race and you just go forward, stop, in a minute or two, you've missed out on quite a bit of distance of cleaning. So it is going to be a problem. And the thing with that is that we need to be quite clear in our tree program that we need to cut back on the types of trees for the simple fact is it says in the regional council document that I haven't got it here. I just gave it to Woody that in the 17 degrees, some of those poplars, willows and that can drink 1,000 litres a day. So when you're in low flows, but if you have flaxes and smaller bushes which still give you the habitat, it doesn't affect your supply of water so much. And the other thing is that the willows and poplars are deciduous, so they drop all their leaves and bark and shit in the race. So it either moves down and then congregates in a low area, and then it becomes this silt that where you actually have a look at it in places. And I've photographed over the last 5 years, I've gathered all this data and I've got it, and I could put a presentation together if you wanted. That the weed won't even grow in there. So if the weed won't grow in that stuff, then there's got to be something wrong with it.
Yep.
So now that we're into water quality testing, a lot of that stuff will come out. But it will be a shame in a few years' time that we have to go through and cut all these trees down because they're affecting our water quality.
Yep. Okay. Hey, thanks. We probably should get you to do a presentation on tree species as you see it and how they affect the water body.
Well, over the last 5 years, as most of you know, I've been tied up in weed investigation, types of weed, all the different types of weeds that are here now with aquarium people buying these weeds from pet shops, and then when they overgrow the aquarium, they lift them out. They're infiltrating through our waterways system and all waterways. When I started here, there was 5 weeds in the waterways. Now there was 16 2 years ago. Now I've identified 21, and some of them are prolific. Some of them do a good job, some of them don't. I've done reports that I haven't written up properly, but they're only in field notes and photographs of, what weeds are good for fish spawning and all that sort of stuff. So we've got all that information, and whether we need that for our consent process will be guided by Lawrence as to how much of that stuff that we need. I think we need to all be aware of the good and bad and the ugly.
Yeah. All right. Johannes?
Mr. Chair, just wanted to maybe further to the discussion around the trees and the operational costs of the waterways. Obviously, the council is maintaining the waterways on behalf of the waterways users, but the actions of the waterways users really affects the rates of the waterways users. So if there's trees in the waterways or inappropriate species planted, then it's going to affect the waterways user. It makes full circle going through the increasing maintenance costs and getting back to the ratepayer. So it really pays for the waterways users to be mindful of the waterways that that's on their property, because it's to their and the rest of the water rights user community's benefit.
I agree. I think those things should be in a code of practice.
Yep.
But the code of practice shouldn't be written by the regional council, as isn't here. It's got to be a code of practice which is practical and meaningful to the water race users. Pikey, how'd you get on with those pine trees up Norfolk Road?
Oh, as you know, the agreement was them to be done in February, but the weather was so bad, the landowner wouldn't allow us on his land. I met with Foreman Forestry 8 or 9 days ago and asked him to come back with a new price and a new contract to clear fell everything. And then once he comes back and the time frame, I've then got to go back to the Ducketts, and then we'll do a new agreement between Ducketts and us. Rachel and I'll sort that.
Around the intake, Pike.
Yes.
Yeah. 1 hour a day.
So
Okay.
we've had them assessed, and there was 1,000 tonne of A grade or whatever 3 years ago. So whether that's improved, I think they look a bit bigger now than they were. Yeah, so now the way the weather is, we may not get them out till next February.
Yep.
Have to see what they come up with.
Okay. Any other questions? The only other question I had was around water tests. I thought at a couple of meetings ago, I thought we moved that we'd get
The
3 monthly updates on water tests.
Yeah, sorry. It slipped my mind in terms of having it. We'll probably have to add it as a separate agenda item in the put in.
And
It was sort of included in one of the attached reports, because that all of those results, except for the last one, would have been part of those graphs in that was in the Stantec report.
if you do it, do it like the financials was previous.
We'll add an agenda item on it.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry.
Happy to do that. And the other question I had too, this might be for Rachel, in terms of water testing, we had a test site down on the eastern side of Carterton. I don't know whether we've still got it going or not. It was on, I think, the water race. Is that number 1 water race? Because we were
Number 2 stormwater / water race on Rutland Road.
Yeah, Rutland Road one, because we were the concern the question was in terms of our water race and knowing what effect the town had on water quality, runoff water from the town had on water quality in the water race on the downstream side of the town. Is that test still being? We definitely had it going for a while.
No,
Right.
it has been stopped.
It has. Would it be possible? I think we should have that. We should have that knowledge.
We probably need to talk to Glenn because he does it and he knows what's involved.
It's
Lauren.
potentially it's one of the sites that I think has probably been identified in the stormwater. Not a regular one, but we could start collecting it.
Yeah, I think it's important from the water race point of view because the water race is on the downstream side of Carterton. Yeah. Okay, if we could do that, that'd be good. You're right. Does everyone agree with that? We did it?
Where precisely is it?
Eh?
Precisely
At
is
the
it?
moment, it's right at the corner of Rutland Road and Hilton.
Okay, so that water race that runs from Park Road right down to the wetland on the Marybrook land just prior to the Mangadariri and then into the Mangadariri. So all our pipe network on the east side from the state highway feeds into that water race. So in the winter, we have the water race water cut off, and then all of that water that's in there is stormwater, manholes and everything in town.
Catchment.
It's a big catchment, that's right. So if the water testing in the new round of consents gets tougher than it is now, and it's probably never going to get any easier, if we're forced to test all that, then you probably need to know that what we're actually looking at.
It's important. I think going forward, and I think in this consent process, I think, to vindicate the water race, we've got to do significant testing, we've got to actually show that the state of the water race, it's in our interest, and it's particularly in our interest going forward to know exactly what we're dealing with. But at the moment, we have 4 test sites, don't we? 7, sorry. 7 test sites.
2 of them in Carrington,
2 of them in Carrington, 5 in Wainawa.
which is on the other side of town, which the town doesn't have an effect in that side.
Yeah, but it'll always be a question that'll come up to this group. People will say, what's the quality of the water? And the more people, if regulations, people bid, get worse than what they are now, then we've really got to, it's really important that we have that knowledge.
There is one other one, so test location MO3 in these maps. Yeah, that's on Waiheke Road.
Yeah.
So that's actually, if it's the place that I'm thinking of in the James's.
Comes out of your place.
Yeah, so that's actually where the actual test point is a drain through my place. It's been classified as a water race. It's been classified as a water race because there's a 100mm feed from the water race into that drain, I think on Portland Road somewhere. Now, I'm not sure how efficiently that works. So it's not really testing truly a water race.
Above that.
The water race still crosses Waiheke Road, but slightly towards State Highway 2. And then the other test point that you're talking about at the corner of Rutland and Hilton Road, that's the one that flows in that drain under Waiheke Road, even closer to the State Highway, where I think you upgraded the culvert. So I just have a question mark in my mind that MO3 is probably not
A water race.
representative of a water race.
No, that's right up at the, that's above that fork, Mike. You know, going up towards the big macrocarpus and James's.
Yeah, because I thought they did it from Waiheke Road.
Yeah, we go in from Waiheke Road, but we walk up. It's past the fork that comes out of your place.
Yep.
Yeah.
So is it,
So
it's definitely the water race then, Poggy?
yeah.
Okay.
Well, we didn't pick the spots. GW set the spots, not us.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are there any other questions? Otherwise, would someone like to move?
We want to.
Sorry.
In terms of the water exclusion, the stock exclusion and vegetation clearance. But that'll be part of that evidence in terms of that was more for the information as much as anything. But I just wanted to raise, in terms of discussions you've ever had with Greater Wellington, because there's been a couple of points that have been made at times. What message are you getting around the stock exclusion, whether or not it has to be permanent or not?
Well, there's 2 things about stock exclusion. One is that you've got national rules.
Yep.
And then you've got regional council rules. The national rules don't consider sheep at all.
Yes.
Sheep are excluded. Regional council thrown sheep in and said all stock. So I would have thought the national rules would override GW. That's one thing. And the other thing is with the setbacks, I read through the setbacks they're asking for are quite ridiculous. But anyway, and I think in here too, at one point, I think what it marked, but they said in terms of providing water, if we don't have access to water races, then regional council, do they subsidise putting pumps and pipes and everything? And then they said that on bigger properties, that would be great cost, which I think if we've got to focus on why the water race system was put in there, what its purpose is. One of its purposes is for stock water. Now, what we've done, farmers have done without regulation, is they've put one wire up against the water races so that cattle can put their heads in and drink, or they have a drinking spot. So I don't know of anywhere where large mobs of cattle are herded across anywhere in the water race system. So I think what we've got to really get in this, and it's why when they talk about stock exclusion, they've really got to have a meeting with us to find out actually what happens out there in the field and what's practical. I don't think anybody would be happy with regional council or or ratepayers having to pay for pumping systems around all the farmland. 600 kilometres of water races. So I think you've got to, I think what I'm probably saying is that we think that we have a system, and our water quality tests show it, that works, and the water is clean, and the water race system, the water race is taken care of by the water race administration and also by the farmers. So I think this is where I just see it, what they're producing is just rubbish, because if they want total stock exclusion, my view would be that they have to pay for pumping systems right through those farms and pay 100%. They're going to take away our water right, which we have. They're going to replace it with something and pay for it 100%. I don't think landowners should be asked to contribute anything.
Okay. So we'll try to get some of the policy or something from the Greater Wellington next meeting. They weren't able to attend.
I could suggest that Greater Wellington join the committee and we have a workshop, because I think this also ties in quite nicely with the code of conduct or code of practice. That if we have a code of practice that is working well, we can use that as evidence for Greater Wellington. But I think the first step might be to get Greater Wellington and the committee together to at least, kick around the idea of everybody wants better water quality and more water coming out the end of the race. So let's figure out how we do that together and keep us everyone in the same room.
I agree. Yep, I agree. I think we go on, the years, the months pass by and turn into years, and we go on and we just don't sit down and sort these things out. And then you get a printout like that with a whole lot of stuff that is absolutely unworkable and unnecessary.
And maybe tie that in with a bit of a visit.
I think the field trips, I would surmise that most of the people that write this stuff have never actually seen the water race system at all.
John, I think one of the most crucial things is the actual input from the water race users themselves. You can have people, like was mentioned before, about sitting in an office in Wellington writing up rules, and they're looking at regulations which have been drafted. But I think it's really important that we have the people that, the skin in the game.
Yeah.
And some of us for, 50, 60, 70 years or longer with our families that have watched that water race and how it's operated over all that time, get some of those facts across as to how it works and how it can all be integrated together to get a sort of really good system going forward where we don't have too many scraps with regional councils, anything like that. So it's a workable system. Now's the time to do it.
I agree. I don't believe there should be any scraps. I believe that we should all work together on it.
Absolutely.
But I think what Jeff's saying is have a workshop with them and sit down and evidence, and also have a field trip the same day and go out and say, this is actually what's happening. This is what, but our responsibility, we're elected by the ratepayers, and for us guys, I feel very responsible that we're representing those ratepayers. Those ratepayers are wanting us to make sure that system stays in place and is workable and isn't killed by regulation or silly rules that someone, like you're saying, John, has dreamed up in some office somewhere.
I think Jeff's words are wise. They're very wise words, and that's what we need to do.
Yeah, promise not to dunk them though, all right?
They're ginger nuts.
But would someone like to move that we do have a workshop sometime in the near future? Probably look at April or something, Lawrence.
We'll look at some dates.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll take that as an action. I'll take that as an action, and we'll ensure that the committee keeps informed on the dates that we have as options.
Okay. Oh, well, thanks very much. That's good. Right, well, if everyone's happy, we'll move on to the information. Oh, did we move? We moved that, accepted?
But I don't know where we actually.
Good. I'm going to move that.
Going for a second.
Who moved?
Someone like to move that the water race, the report be received?
One second.
Neil
David.
and David, or David.
Okay. Those in favour say aye, Thank you. Move on to the stock exclusion regulations produced by regional council. As I've said before, I find it hard to accept this when it's actually in conflict with what's being passed nationally in many areas. But anyway, I think you've probably all read it. But I think make comments and we'll note down the comments.
What's this on, Mr. Chair?
Stock exclusion.
Part of the previous.
Next page.
It's not a report on.
Yeah, it's part of the,
Information, yeah.
Part
part of the
yeah.
report. It's just been.
Oh, okay.
Discussing it, but if there's anything in particular, or because this will be related to how they enforce it in that for the regional council, that could be part of that future discussion with the regional council.
Maybe my recommendation would be that if the committee wants to work through it and get some talking points for the workshop or agenda items for the workshop from those reports, so that so that we can discuss it further in the workshop.
Yeah, all right. Because I think the last workshop we had, there's a bit of, some of the stuff actually we covered in the last workshop. And some was around good management practices, some of the things we were.
And that's part of
we were already
doing forward for that consent application.
But I think the point, I thought that was a very good workshop, but I think the point that I think Jeff and Johannes particularly made, or Ron, who was that you've got to be, we've got to actually say what we're doing correctly, not answering questions as to whether we're doing it right or not. We've got to be on the front foot, on the positive. So this is what we are doing. And I noticed even in this document, some of the pictures of cleaning, some of the stuff that Pikey's been doing for years. I think we've got it. And I did notice, I noticed one picture in here, which I took the picture.
Interesting, Mr. Chairman, page 15, that water race that's there is on a lamb fattening unit. Singled that out as unfenced. And the second one is their show dairy farm. That regional council has totally funded all of the fencing and all of the planting. And that's their runoff next to their dairy unit.
At page 16.
It's
They're not specifically wire wrap, that's just file photos from DWRC.
Somebody without the context, yeah.
Correct.
So that would just be for an example, right? They're not basing a case on those photos. So I think we can get some action point, or not action points, but agenda topics for the workshop. Then we can work through that.
Okay, well. Yeah, okay, so we have we're proposing we have a workshop to update and discuss this document and update on where with the resource consent, update on all the details of where you're up to with that too, in the notes.
Part of the same workshop?
No, probably if members read it and digest it and email in the areas of concern or interest, then we can package that up, and that's the discussion document with the regional council in a workshop.
Yep, all right. Yep, that'll be the way. Okay.
But we're going to, in terms of the application, we need to have that in by the 28th of March. So
fairly quick.
It's going, we're going to have to supply that. But then they'll come back with more information requests, I could see.
So then when should the workshop be? End of March?
I just want to interrupt. So there's two different things. We've got a consent application, and then there's the rules that Greater Wellington are proposing. So that's two separate things. And so the application for the resource consent can still continue. It's due 28th of March. The conversation with Wellington Regional Council is a total separate matter.
Yeah, that's right.
So if So we don't have to feel pressed to have the workshop before the 28th of March, even though we would get onto it as soon as possible.
It'd be nice if they were, but I don't,
It's not.
not necessary to stop, yeah.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll go to a workshop in April sometime. You check dates, give alternative dates or something. And at that workshop, we'll go through, we'll have discussions with the regional council on this topic inclusion, and we'll also go through, prior to that, we'll have points raised on this and discussions.
Because the consent is particularly for the take of the water race, what's going out in the end, and we're going to include the cleaning of it.
Yeah.
So that second document in terms of, and that'll be supported by that notes that we've made on that code of practice in terms of, we might not be completely in line with that cleaning of highly modified, but functionally we are achieving the same sort of process.
Yeah, okay. All right, we'll do that. So we just note that. Yeah, I noticed on, well, it's a by the by, but I noticed on page 31, I thought that drain was a good example of low flows. Is it, Mikey? That's what a water race looks like, a low flow. Not much fish life in there.
Pretty low.
All right.
Can get like that. The tail races can get that low.
Well, no.
Normal summer.
Right, if everyone's happy, we'll move on to financial reports. Who's commenting on finance?
So I can probably talk to that, Mr. Chair. Kyra can't be here today, so I take the report as read and then we'll take any.
Right, any questions?
The difference, the operating surplus of 6K compared to a budgeted deficit of 32, what's the driver for that? Is it just timing of expenditure?
Just say again?
The financial performance for the first quarter provided an operating surplus of 6K compared to a budgeted deficit of 32. That's around the 38K.
Is that the next page?
Page 44.
42, sorry.
Discussion point.
Yeah, that's probably something that we can get back to.
Mostly on maintenance, I think is.
Yeah, so timing of expenditure.
Timing.
Yeah. Income early in the year and expenditure
Later.
That's fine. I mean,
Compounded by weather.
it's the right side of the ledger.
It's all to do with ground conditions, just to take machinery on.
Right.
I've also to support, like if you look at on the right-hand side of that report, 300 for the full year 22, 327,000. For full year 21, 105,000. Can you comment on that, Jonas?
So in terms of support.
Yeah.
So that's summary of that. Support, so the year-to-date action, so you're comparing the current with the 2021
Yeah.
one. So as mentioned, or out of this, that is the comparison with the new LTP, or there's an increase to what it was in the past. So if we want detail into the breakdown of that, that's something that we could look into. But that would be so the full year is obviously the previous financial year.
Yeah.
I'm more than happy to take an action point because I do know that our actuals are running ahead of budget by about $20,000. So I need to.
All right.
I'll certainly take an action.
The question I raised to Johannes the other day, there's a note here, the increase to support costs compared to is due to an increased percentage of overhead charges allocated to water races. And the percentage is made of several factors, main factors, staff spent, time, service area, exactly. So what my question to Johannes the other day is that, well, what was the percentage?
Yep.
Because we've never ever had a clear, I've asked the question before, but I've never been clear on the percentage. That's number one.
Yep.
Do you know, what's that?
I don't know off the top of my head, but it'll be.
So what I did confirm is that percentage increase wasn't a recent increase. That was the percentage increase at the LTP. So that was discussed at the time. It was
221.
So that was before me and Jeff's time, and setting of the new LTP, which will happen over the next year. That discussion will be held with council again of those percentages and what the new budgets for the LTP is.
What? Our harness was that, well, I'd like to know the percentage because we're only a small business in terms of the overall budget is going to be. Yeah. But so what I would have thought that the percentage to allocate the water races, because of the growth in Carterton's got bigger, so therefore your gross income's got bigger. And your costs have got bigger. So percentage, ours wouldn't have changed much at all because we're so small, our percentage would have gone down. Not up.
Not necessarily.
But
so the reason why we say not necessarily is that, so like I explained, is with subdivisions as well, you increase the number of water race users, which increase the overhead support. So with that also, there's also an expectation and a higher level of service in terms of how much time is spent by staff on. It's not only Pikey staff, but there's other support staff as well. So there's the time of, for instance, Lawrence, Rachel, myself, Pikey, and Jeff at this time now. That's all that's contributing to water races.
Oh, and including other expenses like traffic management now.
Yeah, so, but just talking about overheads, so there's a quite significant difference in expectations from the previous LTP to where we are now.
yeah, I suppose I accept that there's more subdivisions, but then I'd probably like this from a layman's point of view and say, well, there's a whole lot more subdivisions inside Carterton compared with the rural area. Subdivisions in the rural area obviously don't attract the same costs that subdivisions in the town would. So therefore, still, I would shock that we certainly should have had an increase of percentage.
John, on page 43.
No, I haven't got the facts.
Page 43, the last paragraph above consideration tells you what the support costs, what it's all about.
Yeah, that's the support by sort of summary of corporate services operate, not operations.
So it's telling you what charges are loaded against the water race.
Yep.
I'm happy to take an action to get those percentages,
Yeah.
John, for the.
Yeah, okay. All right. And the other question I hadn't asked the other day is that I noticed the water race income, if you look at on the next page, on page 44, and our income in 2020-21 was 155,000, our gross income from rates, and 2021-22 it jumped to 744. Is that a true or is that a mistake? So our rates must have gone up by, looking at it, probably 75%. Is that right? That can't be right. I haven't checked ours. Has anyone else checked theirs? I didn't know there was a rate increase.
So I have to trust that it is accurate because the corporate services manager has signed off on this report. We can review it. I have asked that it is. It is in line with the proposed budgets for the year as well. So that increase, even though the increase in revenue does relate to the increase in expected cost as well.
Increase in.
I didn't spend it.
In revenue so that's to June 21-22. It's actual because it's to the last June, isn't it?
Unless the only thing I can think of that was sort of a one-off was it was anticipating the resource consent cost. But that's potentially been accrued across till this year. I don't know.
That's not 300,000.
But that's a cost. It's not revenue.
No.
Yeah, so revenue
is the revenue
income.
But I was going to ring the office trying to do it to see what our rates were.
No, there's no more.
I'd be interested to
He's
get,
calling Maxwell smart.
Jack Daniel.
I definitely,
Around the vault.
I'd be,
Year-to-date budget.
I think-
So it is budgeted, so issues
Last
last.
thing I know, John, my rate, my water rates went up $4.50, but I've only got 6 acres.
That's 2 years.
so,
I think another action on the chief
Yeah.
executive, Mr. Chair.
and then I locked down the expenditure and like we jumped expenditure like corporate services from 56 to 164, 48 to 162.
It could be a classification where some of the water race revenue was being classified as water charges.
Yeah, I'm
It
not
could be a
sure.
reclassification.
Because
So
then,
let me get a clarification because I think that jump 2020, 21 to this year being roughly $300,000 worth of rated revenue needs a bit more explanation.
yeah, well, as a ratepayer, a 75% increase in 1 year, like inflation's high, it's not that high.
What you're telling me is that you don't feel that it's come from your pocket, so it might be a more classification.
Not sure. I don't.
No, he's right. He would have paid them because he's got.
I don't check them.
Mr. Chair, just if you just look at the 21-22 column of the total expenditure and then you just compare that with the 2021 expenditure as well. So there's a $250,000 increase over one financial year in actual cost.
Yeah.
So and that does relate so it does compare with that increase in budget. So it could be that they looked at the actual cost and set the LTP on actual cost. And that's why there was a big jump where previously the rates might have been on a theoretical cost and maybe they didn't absorb all the costs.
I'm surprised that we didn't, correct me if I'm wrong, but we've never had a discussion around huge rate increases for ratepayers in the last 2 years, have we? I don't think so.
If the committee would indulge me, my suspicion is we've migrated from a magic system to planning the budget automatically. And previously we'd done that manually outside of our software system. And I suspect what's happened is there's been changes in the allocations. So it's not actually a massive, 50% increase in rates. I suspect it's been a change in the allocations.
You would have been bombarded through the,
I mean, you would have had your phone ringing off the hook if we'd have hiked rates by 50%. So I need to just follow that up as to why the prior year is looking so out of whack with current year.
Okay.
And I
Complained about it then and it's come back down.
Hey?
But it's interesting to work out why it is.
What's that?
it's
Well, because that's last year's budget, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you've already, that money's gone.
It's gone.
Yeah, I know,
Yeah.
but we did.
And you,
thank you, John.
This year's is half.
so Mr. Chairman, your positive question was really, how have you managed to
Reallocated things where they should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly what I think, Seth.
Trying to be helpful.
Yeah, sorry.
Your positive question, Mr. Chairman, is, wow, see, how did you manage to cut water rates income down from 744,000 to 376,000?
It's easy, just a stroke of the pen.
Did I get a rates reduction? I didn't figure to do that.
Excuse me, Your Worship.
Was that helpful?
No.
Control of your meeting, Chair.
Exactly. Kind of a rebel.
That's year-to-date actual.
Sleight of hand, John. You should be used to that.
Hang on, you're
6 months missing.
Yeah.
say that again.
Yeah, it's actual.
So I'm just correcting Your Worship that the 376 is a year-to-date actual up until December. It's not a full year actual.
I'll say you did overspend.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Have you, okay. Would somebody move that we accept the financial report, please? Neil, is there a seconder? Steve, all those in favour, please say aye. Against, no, thank you. Righto. That takes us to Oh, we general business. That's just the end of the meeting.
General business.
And well, general business, no, that got,
Next time.
that got.
We jumped around a lot. Surely there's something in there.
Anyway, so what I'd like to say, thank you very much for your attendance. And look forward to seeing some dates around the workshop. And I think what we talked about before, I think as far as the regional council paper in here, I think we should read it and then make notes and questions. Any questions, email them in.
So who do we email them to?
Brian,
Brian Della?
Brian, so the chair sets the agenda, so it'll go to Brian.
All right. So many thanks for your attendance, and I hope the weather treats you all well in the next 3 months. And yeah.
Very good.
Very well.
Thank you, everybody.